Okay, I think I've got everybody. Hi, Pa.
Hello.
Hey, can you see
เห็น
us?
นะเห็นจ้า
Okay. Okay, all right. Let me share my screen. One second. So before I start my presentation, I just want to hear a little bit about, what you're hoping to get out of today's session. And yeah, just so that I make sure that I cover what you want to hear. Hang on, let me show you. One second. Okay, can you see the screen okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So yeah, just if you could share with me a little bit about what you want to get out of today's session, please. Who would like to have a go first?
Me.
Katya? Yeah. Okay, Daria.
You
Yes,
can go,
please.
Daria, you can go.
Okay, I was wondering if you can cover the reason of this mummy belly appearing on my body.
Yep.
Very
Yep.
ugly. Thank you.
Absolutely, we'll cover that.
On my side, I think I would like to understand better what is the consequences of having the muscle that are not straight back, apart of not be able to do the exercise correctly because I feel that my body is not able to support it. So.
Got it. Thank you, Katya.
Yeah, mine's kind of like that too, with the ab separation, I guess, and how to regain that back to normal or the best that I can. And then if there's any relation to pelvic floor concerns as well, and how that kind of intertwines. Just how I can focus on that, do my workouts, or what more I can do to also be focusing on that.
Absolutely. And Rocky?
Actually, it's the same as Katya's.
Got it. Pear, don't be shy. Pear, can you hear us? Pear is gone. All right. Pear, you could tell us in a minute when you're ready. Okay. So just a little bit about me. So I'm an ACE certified, so American Council of Exercise certified trainer, and I specialize in pre and postnatal training. And I feel like I want to specialize in this area because this is something that I went through. And I feel like at the time when I discovered I might have diastasis, nobody even know what it is. And when I was training at the gym, nobody could give me of like, because I mean, like after I've given birth, I knew something was different. And I was exercising before, and I want to kind of like regain my fitness. And I felt like nobody was able to tell me what I should be doing or what I should be avoiding. And everybody just assumed that once you've given birth, you're kind of back to normal. And I found that that was not the case with my body. So that's why I really decided to specialize in this area. Okay. I'm also a ICF, International Coaching Federation certified life coach, and I'm also precision nutrition certified coach level 1. Okay. My goals for today is to share my experience of what I went through and how I tackle it and what I learned. And hopefully you could, I'm not sure if any of you are planning to get pregnant again. Anybody?
No.
No? Okay. All right. So I know not to focus on that. So basically just learn from what I learned, and hopefully you don't have to repeat the same mistake. I feel like during first pregnancy, I was just like, this pregnancy is not going to stop me. I was doing boxing before, and I continued to do it right through my pregnancy and went back soon after I've given birth. Now, looking back, that's probably not the best thing to do for my body at the time. And so, and after first pregnancy, after first birth, I found out I have diastasis. And, when I found out that diastasis, I have like very well-defined abs. And for me, for the longest time, I thought if you have a well-defined abs, that's strong core, but it's absolutely not, because I have diastasis, like, underneath my defined core. So just kind of like getting my head around of like, you know, this is not strong core, and how can I regain my core again? So I went into my second pregnancy with a lot more respect for my body. I avoid a lot of actually I avoided all high impact exercises. And for me, the mind shift for me that I went through was looking at exercise in terms of cost and benefit. You know, like a lot of moms want super defined core, so they kept doing crunches. But I mean, like for me, soon after birth, that's a lot more cost than the benefit that you could gain. There are other ways to get abs. And if there are other ways to get abs, define abs without giving me or without making my diastasis worse, I'd rather do that. Okay, so just presenting you of other core exercises that you could do to regain your strength and tone without damaging yourself more. And I want to share, my second goal is to share evidence-based research with you. And at the end of the day, I want you to be able to walk away from today's session, or for those of you who are joining on the core focus workout, I want you to feel empowered to kind of make up your own mind of like, okay, this exercise, because often there is no right or wrong way. It depends on, like, for example, plank, you know, plank may be fine for some moms if they could hold the core position correctly and engage the core, but it might not be fine for some mom who cannot hold it. So it's really cost and benefit. And at the end of the day, I want you to be able to recognize what your body is telling you and to be able to make up your own mind whether you want to do this exercise or not. Because chances are you can always regress a certain exercise to make it suit your current fitness level. Okay. All right. So today's agenda, we'll get to know the anatomy of the core a little bit, because without that knowledge, I feel like you would not understand like the big picture. So that's the big picture of the anatomy of the core, what it does, the function, the role of your core, and like in the more normal functioning core. And then we'll see what happens when your core doesn't function properly. And then when you understand that, you'll be able to kind of prevent and correct. Okay, take steps that you can correct. So anatomy of the core. Where is your core? Can anybody take a shot of when you say core? What comes to mind? Is it the
Your mid-
front?
It's like a cylinder from the side to the front.
Rocky, you've been doing your homework. Yes. So cylinder. Yes. Katya, what were you saying?
Yes, I would say from here to the pelvic kind of area.
Correct. So a lot of people, when you think of the core, or a lot of people who have not been doing homework, they would just think of the core as like the front part, you know, like this six pack. That's what we all kind of think of, like this is your core. But six pack is not your core. Okay, your core actually made out of two layers. You know, the inner core, which is your deep inner layer muscles, and then your outer core. Your six pack is actually part of your outer core. Okay, so the outer core, if you look at this diagram, there's three parts to your outer core. So you see like this external oblique, so like this part of the muscles that kind of come down slant in this angle, and then you have like your rectus abdominis. This is your six packs. Okay, so that's what a lot of people think of core, but it's the outer layer. And then you have the internal oblique. So this muscle, like your rectus abdominis, mainly kind of to help you do forward flexion. So when you get up off the bed, that's your six pack. Every time you rotate, it's kind of like your obliques. Okay, helping. That's the primary function of your outer core. And before I move on from the outer core, I want you to look at this connective tissue here. It's called linea alba, and it's the connective tissue that run from your sternum here to your pelvic bone. Okay, and we'll talk about this when we talk about diastasis and what happened to your linea alba. Okay, so if you look at your linea alba, you already see that there is a gap. So even before you've given birth or pregnant or whatever, there is a gap already. Okay, so it was never closed. So it's not a lot of times like, oh, I have this gap. We all have gap. It's just like the width of the gap. That's what we define as diastasis. Okay. So now the second layer is your inner core. And when we say we want to regain our core strength, this is actually the focus. We want to be able to get your inner core working again. Okay. And you might think, why is it to do with my inner core if I have diastasis? Because that's on the outer layer. But actually having the strong core, all your muscles are kind of like connecting together. And when you have strong inner core and in good alignment, it's kind of pull everything in, and you will have outer core. It's almost like, think of diastasis of like symptoms rather than the cause. Okay. So we want to strengthen our inner core first in order to fix the root cause, in order to heal the symptoms. Okay. And your inner core, like Katya and Rocky say, it's made up of 4 muscles. And the top of your cylinder, so think of it as like a can, Rocky said cylinder. Think of it as like a can. The top of your can is your diaphragm. Okay. And that's your breathing muscle. And every time you breathe, like if you put your hand here, every time you breathe, that's your diaphragm moving. And when you're exhaling, you feel your diaphragm descending and ascending as well. The front part is your transverse abdominis, this muscle right here. And it's kind of like your weight belt, like you see the weightlifter when they put on that belt, that's to give them extra support in their core. Okay, you have your internal weight belt as well. Yes, that's your transverse. The back is your multifidus, that's your back muscle, and that's also part of your core. And same with your pelvic floor, that's the bottom of your cylinder. Okay, and these 4 muscles together, we call them core 4. And when they're functioning properly, they actually move together, and it's almost like they prepare you. They prepare your body before something happens. Like, for example, if someone is coming to punch you, subconsciously your core actually go into preparation mode and kind of like tighten up to protect you. And that's subconscious. What happened is, as we become pregnant, because of the problem that we have, we lose this automatic firing ability. It's almost like you have to retrain it so that you have mind-body connection again. So a lot of time, like for example, for me, have you ever heard of like different level of competency? So the first one is like, you're not aware of how bad you are, even when you're not trying and you're not aware of how bad you are. And the second one is you're aware of how bad you are, but you're trying. But we want to actually move to the 4th level of being very good without having awareness. So that's when your body is automatic, like firing, your core is firing automatically. Okay. When I first trained it, it's almost like I didn't even know this is the problem. And then I realized I have this problem and I have to reconnect my mind and body. And then it's almost like now I'm probably up to the 3rd one. It's still not automatic, but if I'm really paying attention when I exercise, I can engage my core and turn it on. So now I'm moving on to getting it to firing automatically like it was before. Okay. So what is the function of your core 4? If you look at this part, we said, Katya said it's anywhere from your midsection, your sternum to your pelvic bone. And if you look at this area, you see that there's no bone to really support you. Okay. Even though there's a lot of vital organ in this area, there's no bony structure to protect it. So if you think of your core, you have, I mentioned you have rectus abdominis muscle running this way, and you have obliques running this way, an internal oblique, and then your transverse. If you look at it, the first function of your core is actually to be like a tight packaging to protect your internal organ. Okay, that's the first role of your core, to protect your inner organ. The second role is, because of the different way the muscle fiber runs, it actually gives you mobility. Imagine if you have bones here, you will be like walking around like a tin man, okay? But because we have this muscle that run this way and that way, we have mobility to go forward, backward, side bend, okay? That's what gives us mobility. So that's the second role of your core 4, okay? And then because we don't have this bony structure, the third role of your core is to actually provide stability to your lumbar area. So like your spine, your pelvic area, okay? And the way it does that is by regulating your internal pressure. Every time you're inhaling, you're increasing your internal pressure. So think of the can, you know, when you have internal pressure, the can is stiff, right? And when you open it and you drank the liquid out of it, there's no, if you squeeze it, if you squeeze the can, you know, you can squeeze it easily because there's no pressure anymore. So the fourth role of your core is actually to regulate that intra-abdominal pressure to provide stability to your spine, okay? So this is a quick summary. So first role is to contain your organ and provide protection. Number two is to support you in your daily movement. How many of you had C-section? Nobody? Nobody? Okay,
Nope.
I had C-section. And that just really made me appreciate how much core I need in everyday life. It's like whenever I like move myself up the bed, I'm like, oh, it's really like you wiggle your toes and I felt it in my core. So it's like, it's such a vital part of everyday movement, you know, provide stability. And that's why some mom, when your core is not strong, you tend to get a lot of pain in your pelvic area and your lower back. You know, that's because when it's not firing as it should and not working the way it should be. And intra-abdominal pressure, your diastasis is actually a symptom of your core's inability to regulate that pressure. Okay, and we'll talk about that. So this is what, when the system work together, this is what it looks like. There's a flow in the system. When you inhale, it moves together. Can you see? It's not just like one muscle firing, they fire together. So here, when you inhale, your diaphragm kind of descend, but at the same time, your pelvic floor come down as well. And as everything come down, your belly expand, okay? And same, when you exhale, everything kind of snap back into place, okay? I want you to really notice the flow of this system, okay? So how do you get this flow, this synergistic movement? How can you get your muscles to be working together? Because that's part of the problem. Two things, optimal breathing, and it might sound like breathing, it's so like, what? You know, so basic. But breathing is very critical, and there's a specific way of breathing, okay? And we'll talk about that. And proper alignment, okay? If you forget about everything in this talk today, I want you to be able to walk away with this knowledge. To actually have your functioning core and to regain function, you need to pay close attention to how you're breathing and your alignment. Alignment is very critical, okay? Breathing is something that you don't have to do all the time, but a lot of people think, you know, and I'm sure some of you today think, oh, you know, I need to exercise my way back to strength. But without paying attention to your breathing and alignment, exercise alone will not heal it. Because when you're out of alignment, when you exercise, that affects your pressure inside. Okay. And I feel like I want you to think of it as like a jigsaw puzzle. The pieces need to come together. It's not exercise one piece. It's not just breathing. It's not just alignment. These three pieces need to come together in order to have a functioning core. Okay. Any questions so far? No? Okay. All right. So how do you supposed to breathe? We call this diaphragmatic breathing, where you really focus on the flowing. So I want you to take a moment and put your hand. So, okay, first I want you to get into good alignment, and just kind of like, when I say good alignment, just try to have your hands here and try to get your rib cage to be on top of your pelvic floor. If you're someone who like to arch your lower back, just kind of tilt that back and just get your body into alignment. One hand I want you to place on your rib cage, and one hand I want you to place on your belly. Okay. I want you to be able to, so take big inhale. I want you to think of your rib cage as like an umbrella. When you breathe into your back and really expand the entire circumference. We're not just doing the chest breathing where we just feel the breath here. we want to really expand it. So if you put your hand here, when you inhale, you should be able to feel the entire circumference of your chest opening. So inhale and exhale. You feel that around your rib cage? Inhale and exhale. And I wanted you to notice your bottom hand. You want to feel your belly rising and falling as well. Inhale, your belly is rising. Exhale, your body is deflating. Your abs is deflating. Okay, and we'll cover that more. But we want to be able to do full range of motion. A lot of time, and I'm not sure if you have this, but I know I do it. I do a lot of chest breathing when, like, especially when I try to meditate, I can't get very deep breath. It's very shallow. And a lot of time it's because my diaphragm is stuck. Okay. And that's why when I went to Wim Hof, I'm like, oh, I could breathe, you know? So really try to think of it as like full inhalation and full exhalation. Okay. Next, so what happened when you breathe? I want you to look here. When you breathe, as you draw your air in, your diaphragm is actually contracting. So your diaphragm actually comes down to pull the air from the outside in. But as it does that, it's actually pushing your internal organ. You know, we talk about like organ containment. Your organ actually get pushed down when your diaphragm comes down. And that's create the pressure. But before the pressure rise too much, when your core is functioning, your pelvic floor actually descend as well. So there is a room for your organ to drop down. Does that make sense? So so when you inhale, your organ get pushed down, but also your pelvic floor come down as well to support that. And at the same time, you saw it, your belly also expand. So your belly and pelvic floor are creating more room for your internal organ to descend down. But when you're exhaling, your diaphragm is descending, pelvic floor come up as well, and your abs come in. So that's how it's flowing together. And that is the way that your core is regulating the internal pressure, because as the pressure builds up from the pressure of your organ, everything moves, and you're exhaling to rebalance that pressure again. Okay, so and the pressure, I guess, become too much when the system is rigid. And we'll see later on that pregnancy, that's what happened, because there's a baby on top of your organ, and it's just like there's no room for your diaphragm to go down. So it's everything becomes a little bit more stuck. Okay, so I want you to see a lot of people, and this is something I'm trying to relearn, is what I do a lot of time is I do a lot of sucking belly in, just to, like, you know, I get self-conscious, especially like after lunch. I'm like, okay, I'm walking around with like super bloated belly. This is what happened to the pressure when we talk about pressure. If you look at this balloon, you have diaphragm at the top. Can you see? And you have your abs right here, and this is your pelvic floor. When you're holding your abs in, look at what it's doing to your diaphragm and your pelvic floor. Okay, so it's the pressure cannot regulate. And when you constantly doing this, there's a rigidity in your system right now. Okay, and what happened so this is what happened when you hold your breath. The pressure is going up towards your diaphragm, also going down towards your pelvic floor. And for some mom who can't, like me, like, so I have all these sorts of problems because I can't breathe well and I suck in my belly. So, you know, when your diaphragm can't descend as well, then the pressure kind of go into your abs. And if you already have diastasis, that's become very hard to heal, because every time you want to heal it close, there's this pressure to open up that gap again. This is why it's very important for you to be able to regulate your intra-abdominal pressure through your breathing. That's why whenever we exercise, I say, do not hold your breath. Make sure you're focused on inhaling fully and focus on exhaling fully. Okay, and a lot of time people just focus on like, but not taking in the inhale. The inhale is the half of the puzzle, you know? It's not just about, because when you're exhaling, you're actually tightening the system, which is providing extra support, but you need to be able to release it as well. Rocky asked me a very good question of like, oh, I thought, you know, if I'm constantly holding in my abs, I'm keeping the muscle tone. I just want to illustrate the point. If you look at my wrist, okay, this is why neutral alignment become very important. If my wrist is like this, there's muscle on both sides of my hands, right? And if I'm constantly doing this, that's mean the muscle on this side is contracting, whereas the muscles on this side is relaxing. But if I keep holding this position over time, it will become tight. Strong muscle is flexible muscle that can support you through the entire range of motion. You know, when you're like, oh, I feel so tight, I can't move. That's not good. You know, you want flexible and you want flexible muscle that has mobility. So that's why when you're constantly holding in your abs like this, you're not actually making it stronger. You're actually weakening it by tightening it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So I hope that gives a good visualization. So we want to make sure our breathing is proper so that our muscles work together. So what happened when you're inhaling as well? When you're inhaling, your chest is expanding. And when you're exhaling, it comes back down. So make sure you're not just focusing on the front, but focusing on the entire circumference of your chest as well. Any questions so far? No? We're covering a lot. All right, next part, you know, we talk about the 3 pieces of jigsaw puzzle. The first is breathing, we just discussed. Next is proper posture and alignment. You know, the way I think of posture is like the way we carry ourselves throughout the day. But as you keep carrying yourself in that position, it determines your alignment, okay? Like if you think of it as like this posture, certain ideal posture might not be good for your optimum functioning of your core. So if you think about like the gymnasts, you know, they're constantly like this, their way they thrusting their rib cage up. Same with soldier, you know, like when you think of like, oh, good posture, good alignment, everybody just kind of like, huh, you know, but actually this might look good, but it doesn't help your core to function properly. Okay. And I box a lot. And it was kind of like, this is the posture because you're always like guarding. So you're always like having your shoulders come up and you're hunching. Proper alignment, a good posture is when you're close to your neutral alignment. And when I say neutral alignment, I want you to think of like your body is like 3 blocks. There's like different cavity. The thoracic cavity, that's housing your rib cage, should be right on top of your abdominal cavity, should be right on top of your pelvic cavity. And that might sound like, you know, makes sense, no brainer. But, you know, if you think of it like, you know, like gymnasts, they're no longer stacked. You know what I mean? Because now your rib cage is forward, or some like boxer, when they're like this, these 3 cavities are no longer stacking on top of one another. Okay, so when you think of neutral, just kind of like, okay, so if you're someone who have their back hunch a lot, just kind of like, okay, I need to kind of open up my chest more. And if you're someone who like arching a lot, just kind of like bring it back more. Now I want you to think of your rib cage, which houses your diaphragm, as a bell. Okay, and I want you to see how that affects your breathing. So think of the bell, the ringing bell. Okay, if you're ringing your bell and the bottom of the bell is flying up where you're thrusting your rib cage like this, okay, and then try this position first where you're hunching, everybody hunch, okay, and try to breathe. Pair, you hunching, okay, hunching, and try to breathe. Where do you feel your breath?
In my chest.
When you hunch?
I feel an abdominal cavity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
back in the middle.
Yeah, your breath is stuck in your abdomen. Okay, and at the same time, try to do this now. Now try to have the bottom of the bell fly open and breathe. You feel it in your chest?
Mhm.
You feel the difference though? Like
Mhm.
when you reposition yourself, it affects the way you can breathe, right? So the neutral position is when you have a quiet bell. Okay, so if you think of like, you know, rib cage thrusting this way as like the bell opening, and then like when you round your back, the bottom of the bell is flying that way. We want a quiet bell where it's just like silent and right on top of your abdomen cavity. Okay, and now I want you to think of your pelvic bowl as a pelvic floor as a bowl with water. Okay, so you don't want to spill, if you have this water in your bowl, you don't want to spill the water forward or backwards. If you spill it forward, that means you have excessive curve in your lower back. Okay, and this is the classic pregnant posture where, as a lot of time as we load our front, as our front load increase, you feel the pressure in your lower back. So that's not neutral. Okay, and at the same time, some moms get stuck in this like bum tuck position as well, where it's kind of like this, where they squeezing their bum all the time. That's not good either. So I want you to think of your pelvic floor as like a water bowl, and you want to have it in a way that is like the bowl is level. Okay, so everyone just try. I know it's hard because you're sitting down. If you want to, you can stand up. Steph, if you want to get out of the floor, get out of your car for a few seconds, but just play around with your pelvic area. Okay, you want to find that neutral position. And how do you find the neutral position? I want you to put your hands here. So I have the heel of my palm on the hip bone here, and my fingertip on top of my my vagina. If it's neutral, your hand and palm will kind of be level like this. Okay, you don't want to be in this position where the top of your hand is coming forward, like the heel of your palm is coming forward. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so find your neutral. And if, like for me, I'm someone who arch my lower back a lot, or used to anyway. It would feel like I'm tucking my bum a little bit. Okay, and for someone who's a bum tucker, when you find your neutral, you might feel like you're like arching your lower back a little bit. Okay, so it depends on what your natural state is, and you just have to kind of learn that. Daria, what question?
I'm a butt archer a lot.
But you mean like lower back archer?
Yeah. So
okay, so like you feel pain here in your lower back a lot?
Yes. So I find it hard to consciously tuck it under to make it.
Yeah.
So is
you
there
know the only thing you could change is bringing awareness to it. Okay, that's the first step to change. You can't change something you're not aware of. Okay, and that's something that I have to unlearn a lot too. Another thing I'm trying to unlearn is forward head. That was like my classic posture, you know, and now it's like when you walk, I'm just kind of like, okay, chin in, and it's kind of like feel like a turkey neck because I'm like, I'm not used to it. But this is where this is closer to neutral. You know, if you look at children as they're born, look at their posture. They have like, they're always in neutral alignment, you know, and just observe them. They sit with their back straight. They don't hunch forward. They don't arch their lower back. So just every time you start to feel pain, you're kind of like, oh, what am I doing? And one thing I found really helpful is when I sit and work, I just have this ball here, because I notice if I'm not using this, I kind of sit at the edge of my chair and then I start to arch my lower back. And when I'm aware of that, I just kind of like, okay, realign and do it. You just have to keep doing it. Okay, and that's the only way you can kind of learn to shift your alignment.
For me, it's around. I have terrible posture. Do you have any recommendations for that, since I do work a couple days a week and I'm basically just sitting at my desk the whole time, and I have horrible, like, I just sit like that for hours. It's terrible.
Do you have what I really like is when you try to sit, try to have make sure your elbows are supported so that you're not like shrugging. So try to bring it down. Let me show you the neutral position. Have I talked about that? This one. I want you to think of it. Actually, I'll show you in a minute. So basically, Steph, just try to think of it as like, okay, when I'm sitting, again, there's no easy way out. It's just like turning your awareness on your posture as you walk and as you go in your daily life. Okay, so try to think of like these 3 cavities and if they're aligning or not. And when you're sitting down, just make sure you have nice long neck, you're not shrugging. Okay, and that's why during the exercise, I don't just focusing on the push-up. I always like to do full body movement because I don't want any part of my body to be more dominant than others. Okay, and actually, if I go to my physio, she would argue that my front is a lot more dominant. Like all my muscles, she's like, all your muscles in the front of your body. You know, it's like you don't focus. And now I'm like, shit, I really need to work my back. You know, so you want everything to be, because if your chest is dominant, it's like pulling everything forward. So you want a strong back to be able to pull you back as well. Okay. All right. So quick recap. The functioning of your core, like the role of your core is to house your organ, support you in your daily movement, provide stability to your spine and pelvis area, regulate your pressure. And the way to get that function, your core to function properly, is through the synergistic movement of your core 4. And how do we get synergistic movement? By breathing properly, by being in the right alignment. Okay. So I whizzed through this part quickly because we all been through it and we're not trying to have another baby. So I want you to appreciate how pregnancy affects your core. So if you look in this picture, as your belly is growing, there's a lot more load to your front. So your breasts are bigger, your belly is bigger. So everything starts to load the front of your body, and that shifts the center of your gravity. So when there's an increasing front load here, this belly area, and it's not just the front load, your pelvic floor, which normally your internal organ maybe like 1 to 2 kilograms, is now housing like 10 kilos, like a watermelon. You know, so there's a lot of load to your pelvic floor as well. Think of your pelvic floor as, you know, we use the can as a analogy. Another good analogy to think of it is like brown paper bag. When you add grocery to your bag, look at what happened to the bottom. Okay, it's lengthened. Okay, and that's how incontinence can appear. But for some mom who if you're someone who's experiencing incontinence, and we'll talk about that later, it could be because it's too tight or too loose. If you're doing a lot of Kegels and always contracting without releasing, then your pelvic floor will become too tight, and that could cause a problem too. The only way to find out is to go see women's health physio, and I could give you a recommendation who can actually do internal examination. You will not be able to tell if the problems come because your pelvic floor is too relaxed or too tight. Somebody, a specialist will need to be able to tell you. Okay, so these are the changes that's going on with your body, and the effect of these change are that, you know, one, you're now shifting your alignment from your ideal position, your neutral position, because when your chest is heavy, you tend to hunch forward more, and that affect your muscle balance as well, because, you know, when I do this, it's no longer balanced because this side is tightening, this side is relaxing. And so it's not just your alignment that's out, your muscle tone is out because now there's imbalance. One side is more dominant than the other, and non-optimal breathing, because when you're in this position, we already play around with, you know, the position of our chest and how that affects your breathing. So when everything is out, you can't breathe properly. You can't breathe as fully. I want you to look. This was my alignment when I went to see Emma, and she's the health physio that I like to recommend. Can you spot the difference between the left and the right?
You were so much hunching forward, literally.
Yeah. So if you draw a line through my body, in the left, I was in the anterior pelvic tilt, like you, Daria, where I load my lower back because my water bowl is spilling forward. Okay. There's a lot of pressure in my back. If you look at the left and the right, you see there's a lot more arch in my lower back in the left picture. Can you see that?
Yeah.
And in the left picture, my head is forward as well, and I'm rounding my back. Okay. So, okay, let's scan through. Here I have forward leaning head. I'm rounding my upper back. There's excessive curve in my lower back, and because there's a curve here because I'm rotating my pelvis forward. Okay. And actually another thing that I could point out to you is if you look at my alignment on the left, it's almost like I'm leaning forward on my toes. Can you see that? So when Emma corrects me, this is my neutral. Okay. If you look at neutral position sideways, your ears should be in alignment with the middle of your shoulder blades, which should be in line with the middle of your hip bone, which should be in line relatively to kind of like your ankle. Okay. And that's kind of shift everything. Like if you look here, everybody, if you can, I want you to stand up, please. Steph, if you can, just step out of the car for a few seconds. I want you to kind of reposition yourself, like just jiggle. And I want you to think of it as like slightly tuck your shin in. And obviously this depends on where you are currently in your posture as well. But neutral alignment is where your chin is kind of in line. So think of your head. Your head should be in line with your spine. Okay. And that will, when you have your head in line with your spine, your chin will naturally kind of tucked a little bit. Okay. And when you tuck that in, you'll bring your ear in alignment with your shoulder more. Okay. So if you look sideways, there should be alignment between your ears, your shoulders, and your hips. 70% of your weight actually should be on your heels. I want you to notice, just loosen your body, and just stand like you would normally. What can you notice about your current posture? As I mentioned before, you can't change something you're not aware of. So tell me, what are you noticing about your current posture?
My
So
shoulders.
Sorry, my
go,
pressure
Steph.
is on my lower back. My pressure is
Okay.
actually on my lower back.
Forwards.
Okay. Katia is feeling a lot of pressure in your lower back. Rocky, you said you are hunching forward.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. And
Same.
Daria?
Same. I'm
Same.
punching forward and my lower
Okay.
back is very far away.
Okay. Steph and Pat, what do you notice?
Punching forward with my shoulders, and then
Yes.
that makes me hunch forward and everything.
Yeah. Where do you notice your weight is in your heels? Is it in your heels or towards your toes?
Toes.
Toes. Okay. So we need to kind of realign our body. So, and you know, when you first do it, when Emma corrected me, I'm like, this feels so off. I feel like I'm about to like go backwards, because it's like, I was so used to leaning forward, and my husband as well. You know, it doesn't just affect mom. Like, I feel like this office syndrome really affects everybody, and like the text neck. So it's just like a modern day posture. So really, this is the first step of awareness and first step to change. Just being aware of what you're currently doing and trying to slowly shift everything. So for me now, I'm trying to really be conscious of like, okay, especially like when I lead the Zoom, you hear me sometimes say, Seth, like, okay, lean back into your heel. 70% of your weight should be in your heels, okay? So you should feel the weights around your ankle area, okay? All right, and another thing that I see a lot is when you're, let's say you're standing or like standing on the BTS, when you look down at your toes, notice what they're doing. This is neutral. A lot of time we're standing like this. Okay. So you want to be able to kind of like, okay, when I'm aware, just kind of like when I'm brushing my teeth, I'm now in the habit of like looking at the side mirror and look at where look at my posture, my lower back, and where my toes are pointing. Okay. So, we talk about muscle imbalance. This is probably like the two classic mummy posture, the bum tucker, and they're leaning backwards more, rounding their back, but like going back, where the box is like out here and the pelvic box is like out forward, and like sounds like Daria Katia, and this is me as well. A lot of time where we're like arching our lower back and our chest is kind of like rounding. Okay, so you want to get close to neutral. This is what pregnancy does. If you look at the line here, this is full range of motion. Can you see, like, I could go, when I inhale, my diaphragm descend, touching the line, and when I exhale, it's touching the top line. When you start to have a baby, the first pregnancy is not as dramatic. You can see like there's still movement, but now it doesn't touch the top line. And like in the first trimester, there's even more stiffness to the system. Can you see that? And the problem is, once we're used to that way of breathing, it kind of stays with us, even when we've given birth. Okay. So that's something you need to be aware of. So a quick recap: pregnancy changes the way your body align and your muscle tones. It affects your muscle imbalance, and it affects your breathing. Okay. These changes the way your inner core function. So now we get into the dysfunction and causes. If you look here, this is your diastasis, what diastasis look like. This is, as I mentioned before, it was never closed. There's slight gap here, okay, to begin with. And during pregnancy, your belly has to expand. And I want to let you know that diastasis is actually very normal. It's a normal part of pregnancy. You'll not be able to grow your baby without diastasis, okay? Because everything, like when the baby is growing, your body needs to make more room for your belly to be able to grow, okay? So like 90% of like 100% of women will have diastasis. The problem is, for the 70% of them, after birth, the gap kind of closed. Maybe not, let's say if this is like before pregnancy, this is a gap before pregnancy, and after pregnancy, it might come to here. So it's not closed like it was used to before, but we still don't consider it as a gap. Like we don't consider it diastasis, okay? The problem is when it kind of stays wide, because that's weaken your core. And if you ask Pear trained with me one-on-one, her weight hasn't changed, but what she noticed is her circumference, her waist has become smaller. And when you start to heal your diastasis, that will be the effect. You will have smaller waist, because as your gap closes, your circumference will become smaller as well. Okay, so that's a comforting thought. All right, next. So what I want to reemphasize is it's not a tear, it's a sideways stretch. Think of it as like a chewing gum. When you're chewing and then you're like stretching it out, it's lengthened and it's become thinner, okay? So it doesn't have as much elasticity. And I mentioned before, like 70% of women, the gap will come close together to a level where we don't consider that they have diastasis, but 30% of women, the gap remains, okay? And what happened is, when we talk about the pressure, when you have diastasis and there's internal pressure build up because you're out of your alignment and you're not breathing properly, the pressure will always find the weak spot. Okay, and your weak spot is your connective tissue, your linea alba. So when there's pressure buildup, it comes to your connective tissue, and that's why you will not be able to heal it unless you fix your alignment and breathing first. Okay, and that's why exercise alone will not fix it. So common symptoms to know whether you have the abscesses or not. Sounds like you all kind of recognize that you have it. This is what I was talking about. You might have a very clearly defined abs, and you could still have the abscesses. So if you look on top of my belly button, there's a gap here. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. That is the abscesses. Okay. Mommy tummy is a sign that you have the abscesses. So mommy tummy could be something like, you know, your weight has gone back to pre-pregnancy or even lower, but you have like, you still look like you have a tummy. Okay. And that could be, and a lot of time mom's like, you know, like, I just don't know why my belly wouldn't go down, you know, like my weight has come back. Could be because it's not their weight, it's not their nutrition, it's because they have the abscesses. Okay. Umbilical hernia, where your belly button sticks out now, where it wasn't before, that is one of the symptoms. Lower back pain, the coning. Anybody notice that they're coning when they're Katya, Rocky, anybody else? Okay, Daria. All right. So coning is when we talk about that pressure. Whoops. When there's too much pressure, it pushes out, and that's what's creating the doming, the coning. Okay. Next, I want to talk to you about the pelvic floor dysfunction. If you look at your pelvic floor, it's kind of look like a hammock. Okay, that sling from the front of your pubic bone to your coccyx. Okay, and it's like a sling, and and it's housing all these internal organs like your bladder, your uterus, your bowel. So if the common pelvic floor dysfunction would be like pelvic pain. I used to have pelvic pain. And I want to say, like, as you continue to strengthen your core, all these symptoms will go down. Like once you start to realign your posture and breathe, one thing that I really noticed is I no longer have painful sex. Okay. Where I used before, because I remember going to Emma and she was like, you know, your pelvic floor is very tight and that's what's creating pain. Okay. Incontinence, the symptom of your incontinence will reduce as well once you fix your core. So, you know, we talk about, Katya wanted to know what happened when you do have the abscesses. So the impact of the abscesses is once your internal structure is not as well supported, it lead to other symptoms like this. It like 66% of women who has the abscesses will show some kind of pelvic floor dysfunction. And that's why it's not just a gap that is like, you know, or just a mummy tummy. You have the incentive to fix it so that it doesn't lead into these other problems. Is that clear, Katya? Yeah. So 66% of women with the abscesses will have some kind of pelvic floor dysfunction. For me, I had pelvic pain. Yes.
So when I'm doing exercise, I'm coning, right? So that means that I should not do exercise, or?
That's okay. That's a very good question. If you're coning, that's mean the intensity of that particular exercise is too much for your core at this point in time. So, you know, like in my Zoom class, one thing I always do is to offer regression, because I never want anybody to dome. And there's always a way to make that particular exercise easier. And in our workout class, we'll cover all that, because we all start with different level of strength in our core. Okay. So if it is doming, regress and do something. You should always kind of like, you should be able to hold your core in, and breathing will help you as well, will help reduce the coning as well. And we'll cover that when we exercise together. Okay. Okay. Does that answer your question? All right. Pelvic. So we talk about pelvic pain. painful sex or as you're sitting, incontinence, pelvic organ prolapse. This is what inspired me to keep sticking to my daily core exercise. You know, we talk about like your pelvic floor housing all these internal organs. Prolapse is when one of these organs descend down your vagina. Okay, so and it's a problem that doesn't start like, you know, within the, it starts like 10, 15, 30 years, you know, down the line. Not like, oh, I've given birth like 5 years ago, I now have prolapse. It's kind of like it builds up. So you really want to make sure that you correct this weakness in your core. Okay. As I mentioned before, the imbalance could be from your muscle being too tight, your pelvic floor being too tight or too lax. So you need to go and seek out women's health physio to help give you that assessment. Okay. Returning to high impact exercise too soon could be part of the problem as well. Okay. So a good, I feel like all of you, Rocky, how old is your baby? Sorry.
He's
you're on
6.
mute. 6. Okay, he's 6. So, you know, like, don't think of it as like, oh, you know, give birth a while ago or will not be able to heal it. You could always heal your core at any stage. Okay. So, I'll just mention this, but basically, how do you know like when you're ready to get back to exercise? One, you could do, it usually takes like 4 to 6 months for your pelvic floor to kind of re-heal itself. Because I mean, think of your pelvic floor, like it's been through a lot, you know, during that 9 months. It's constantly increasing the load that it has to bear. So give yourself time and respect your body in allowing it to heal. And even like, let's say if you're experiencing incontinence now, just like same with Katya's question of doming, that just means your body is not ready for that level of intensity at this moment. Okay, so you regress and you build up before you start to try that exercise again. It's not forever. You just have to kind of like meet your body where it's at. Okay. This is something that I really want to dispel is like, you know, oh, now I have incontinence, like I laugh when I pee when I laugh, or I pee when I jump. This is part of motherhood. I now have to live with that. You absolutely don't. It's a common thing that many moms experience, but it's not normal. It's basically your body's way of telling you, you need to help me out. Okay. All right. Any question? Now, I always have a problem with this. Let's see. Can you, I'm gonna stop sharing this. I'll send you individually this video because I'm conscious of time. I want to make sure we get out. But basically, oops, performing like high impact exercise too soon could be part of the problem as well. Wait, where did you go?
How you can figure out when you are ready?
How that's a very good question. Your body will tell you, like in terms of like, same with exercise intensity. If you, yeah, let me go back to here. If you feel, and I'll cover it in this slide. So let me recap. Causes of your core dysfunction is misalignment, non-optimal breathing, performing high impact exercise too soon before your body is ready, non-optimum core strategy like holding on your breath, or, you know, like holding your breath or holding your stomach in, and performing incorrect exercise. So when I say performing incorrect exercise, so breath holding as you exercise, I consider that incorrect exercise. Progressing too fast, so like I mentioned before, if you're doing something and you're doming, that's mean you're progressing too fast. So anytime that your stomach's doming out like this, I want to show you this is what's happening internally. So there used to be this gap. There's this gap that used to be tighter, right? So there's more support in your system. Now that there's a gap, when there's internal pressure build up, this is your internal organ kind of like pushing. Okay, so you do not want to cone. Every time you cone, just stop doing whatever you're doing and regress. Okay, I hope that's clear. So the way to prevent it is, the best is prevention. So during pregnancy, and now that we can't do it, I'll cover it here, you know, just making sure you're aware of your posture and alignment, practice your diaphragmatic breathing, and respect your body's recovery. You know, give it time, and you could start doing these core exercise, and we'll cover it. What's the time now? We can cover it briefly, and just make sure you don't return to high impact exercise too soon. Okay, so make sure your core is ready before you add load. So Katia, to answer your question, how do you know that your body is ready? If you could do that exercise, like let's say you're doming before, you regress, okay, and you build up that foundation, you could try this exercise again. And if you don't dome anymore, that means it's ready, okay? Same with high impact exercise. You want to strengthen it first. It's almost like before you could strengthen it, you need to retrain your core to work it in a way to be able to support you first. So if you're leaking when you jump or cough, you want to again build up that foundation before you're ready. So don't do any high impact exercise. And there's so many ways to kind of like do high intensity without high impact. Okay, don't confuse high impact with high intensity. You know, like if I'm like doing this, you know, this is not impact, it's still making me sweat, rather than like hopping around like this. You know, meet your body where it's at. Any questions so far? We're gonna do a quick alignment check. No? Per, any question? Daria? No? All right, let's do quick alignment check. So I'm gonna move my screen. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Okay. So you try to get comfortable. If you have a mat nearby, that is great. Okay. I want to start you in finding your neutral position. So if you have a mat, try to find a mat to get comfortable. I want to show you neutral alignment in different positions. Okay, so if you are like Per is exercising with me, one thing I always say is, and I found like this helped me so much. It's almost like helped me unlock my alignment. So when first position we're gonna find is neutral alignment when you're lying down. So if you can you lie down? No? Katia, where are you?
Today I'm in the office. I mean, I can lie down on the floor, but that would be a little bit weird.
Let's do a seating position then. Let's do seating position. When you're in a seating position, especially if you're easy way to exercise, okay, you will have like, let me show you the regression. I recommend you get this ball. It's very helpful to activate your pelvic floor and your abs. So make sure you get the ball. And like when you sit down, look at yourself in the mirror. You know, we talk about that 3 cavities. You want to make sure you know how to get into neutral. And the very easy way to tell whether you're neutral or not is to notice your breathing. Okay, so how did your breath feel when you're sitting? Can you breathe fully? If you're in neutral position, you should notice the flow in your breathing. Like you'll be able to inhale and then exhale easily. You will not feel like your breath is stuck in your chest or like it's stuck in your belly. Anybody having problem aligning? No? Yeah, Daria, what are you feeling?
As I'm sitting on the chair all day long, every day working, I noticed just now that my bottom is still bending.
Your bottom is rounding.
Yeah, like
Okay.
outwards. So
Yep.
because of my chair, or maybe I don't know why, but
Let me show you. So this is what I mean. If I don't have the ball, this is what I tend to do. I lean forward and I arch my back like this. Okay. So what I try to do is get myself, let's say this is a table. I will try to get myself closer to the table and I place the ball here. And I want to make sure I get closer to the table so I could rest my elbows down. And immediately I feel less pressure in my lower back. Daria, have you got this ball already?
no, I will go to Decathlon soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's so handy just to have it. Katia, what are you noticing?
Yes, so I noticed that even though I arch my back, my flow is working well. So I'm not sure it's because I used to be a
Your
gymnast.
flow is
Flow of
working
breathing.
well.
Yeah, I mean, I can
Uh-huh.
feel the breathing flow, right? But
Okay.
I think I still arching my back.
Okay.
Less than
Well,
normal, but still.
but do you notice can you breathe better when you're not arching your back?
Yes, but I feel uncomfortable because I think that, I mean, I feel that position is wrong, but maybe it's because what you mentioned, right? That is not my natural position because I used to do differently, maybe.
Yeah. So really try to notice, you know, main thing is like your rib cage and your pelvic floor, and just make sure they're parallel. You know, think of like your diaphragm and like your pelvic floor muscle. Just make sure they're like this rather than like you're opening up and flaring your rib cage. Okay? Lying down. I know you can't lie down, but I want to show you the lying position. And Rocky, just take notes of this when you exercise. I like to, this doesn't work with everybody. You just have to notice, but I want to show you first. If I don't use it and I say I get down like this, naturally I will feel like my lower back is coming off the floor. Can you see here? Okay. And my rib cage is kind of like popping up a little bit. Okay. And this is a good trick to realign your body. So just have two pillows and one's kind of like at an angle. And what that would do to your alignment is it will kind of prop your upper body up a little bit. Your lower back will be closer to the floor. And now I feel like, so the pillow should be kind of like your upper back here. It'll be more supported. Okay. And when you do core exercise, you know, I'm sure you've seen this, like the classic leg slide. Yeah, the heel slide. What you're looking for is stability. We don't want to slide our heel with everything like shaking everywhere.
Right.
You know, one of the most frustrating thing with core exercise, especially for me, I love sweat.
It's slow.
It's very slow, and you don't get any like sweat to congratulate you at the end of the session. But it's like it's a very subtle movement. You want to be stable and you want to be in control. And when you exercise, you don't want to feel like there's too much pressure building up here. Okay. I want to show you one thing. A lot of time when people say engage your core, this is what they do, like flex
your stomach.
Okay. Yeah. The way you turn on your core is by lifting your pelvic floor up and draw your abs gently in. So it's the up and in at the same time when you exhale. Okay. So when you inhale, you relax everything. And when you want to engage your core to get that extra support, you draw your pelvic floor up and abs in. Okay, and it should not look like a hard contraction. It's very subtle. Think of it as like you're just lifting up that little blueberry. You don't want to crush it. Okay, lifting it up like with your vagina and just kind of like up and in as you exhale. It's a big inhale, exhale, up and in. You exhale, when you exercise, you want to exhale when you need support. So when you exercise, usually there's two parts of the movement. So for example, when you squat, you're inhaling down. That's the easy part because you're going with gravity, right? You're just dropping down. So you want to inhale on the easy part of the movement. So as I squat, I inhale. And when I need support, because this is going to be the hard part of the movement where I'm working against gravity, I exhale and I engage my core. So pelvic floor up, abs in as I push up. Okay.
Right. So this applies for all exercises.
Yes. And you know, I talk about like breathing. You don't need to go throughout your day and just like, you know, it's like when you think of it as like when you want that extra support, like before you go and pick up your kids, just kind of like, okay, engage your core, exhale when I lift. Okay. Or when you want to get out of bed, you kind of like, and the good way to get in and out of bed is a lot of time we just kind of do this, right?
Yeah.
If you don't want to put too much pressure in your core, just turn it sideways, kick your legs and push up. Okay. If you want to jackknife, just at least support your core and exhale. That would already help. And Katya, you mentioned that sometimes you're doming. Is there a particular exercise that you do that is causing you to dome?
Well, I noticed that when I was doing yoga, and in yoga, sometimes some exercises are quite hardcore where they ask you to keep the legs up.
Like a V, V-sit?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would ask your yoga teacher at this point because sometimes they give you that supporting pillow that could help prop you up.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I would do that. Okay, but sometimes what you'll notice is if you're in like, I could still dome if I'm not engaging my core. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you see that? This is me not engaging my core. But if I'm exhaling,
oh, I see.
Can you see it's getting supported and helped?
Yeah.
This is what I mean by, for me, it's still not automatic, but I'm super anal and very like conscious when I exercise and when I move. I use my breath to help, and I use my alignment to help me a lot. And I can already feel like my gap is closing. Like it used to be messy, you know. And like
another question, because you're really good that you can actually do that, but I feel that I'm not connected.
Do what?
Like kind of engage your muscle, but I feel that I could not engage my muscle of my belly. It's kind of like the connection is not there. So I don't really know how to.
So I would just, the easiest way to start, Katya, you have to start somewhere, right? And for me, this takes practice. And I feel like I've been with core exercise, I want you to think of it as like, if you exercising with me, you're staying with me for 45 minutes, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But if you're not exercising with me, just do 10 minutes. For me, like before I jump on Zoom workout with you, Steph, I would just do like 10 minutes. That's all I give myself with core exercise. Consistency is key. You don't need to put it out every day. You know, you want to do something that is doable and sustainable so that you could keep doing it in the long run, you know? And the easiest way, Katya, to do mind-body connection, just kind of like lie on the floor with the pillow, obviously. So you're propping up, you know, and support it. And just lie here and hold your rib cage, hold your belly, inhale, and just focus in on like your pelvic floor. Just visualize. I find visualization really helps. And if I say, okay, I want to pick up my pelvic floor up and lift it off the floor and abs in at the same time. Just focusing on doing that a few rounds, okay, like a minute or two. That would already help. Any last minute question? Seeing a lot of yawn. No?
It's me breathing properly. I do this, I start yawning.
Okay. Is it clear? Is all your answered, all your questions answered?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. See you next week. And yeah, I'll send you the link for the core workout. Steph, you'll have access to the core workout on the website as well. So watch through that. Just choose and do 10 minutes. Okay. The goal for the workout is I'll try to load you. You want to load your core in different position. So you don't want to just be like, you know, one thing with dancers for me is I used to be terrified of stretching myself for the longest time because I'm like, oh, I don't want to stretch out my connective tissue. But you want to be comfortable and you want to gain confidence and you want to be able to move and control your core. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. I'll load you in a different position so that your muscles get worked. All right, lovely to see you all. The recording will be available. I'll send you the link when it's available.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a nice
Bye.
weekend. Bye bye.
You too. Bye, guys.